All right, everybody, aloha. Welcome to the Solar Coaster live show here with Jason Faircar in Osaka. This is Josh Porter in Maui, Hawaii. Welcome. So good to see everybody here, everybody. Jay, what's up, buddy? How are you today?
Good morning. This is the Jay got a haircut, Josh did not show. Um, and
Here we
refuses to.
go.
No, this is a fantastic show. We've got Raghu Belur from Enphase. Is the co-founder and chief product officer. We've spoken to him before. Really smart guy, really passionate about what he does, and so looking forward to airing this so that everybody else can listen in.
Yeah, I like Belur, man. He's just an amazing character. And fourth time on the show. We've had he and his partner Martin on in the past. And it's you've made it when you get a chance to not be the CEO of the company you built. You get a chance to be like the founder and chief whatever you want to be guy, right? So and then he's just envisioning, all this
What do
great
you want your
stuff.
business card to say? Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, man. And it's always inspirational to talk to Raghu and learn about where he sees things going, in the future. So brilliant fella. And we got some great news and events today, and it's just fun to be back on the solar coaster, rocking and rolling on a more regular basis. So thank you for that, Jay. Let's jump right in to our first article, and you're going to have to remind me on which one you want to hit today, Jay.
First news. So nice Honolulu Civil Bee article talking about Kauai and their energy cooperative. They've been pushing the envelope. We talked last show, we talked about Hawaii being kind of the leader globally, where people are looking at us because we are energy isolated, right? And Kauai is kind of leading the charge within Hawaii. And that's specifically because they are an energy co-op. They are not an investor-based utility company. So they have been taking some chances, but it's really paying it off. And this whole article is about how since the war in Ukraine is driving energy prices higher, Hawaii Energy, the electric companies, have said that standard Hawaii residents' electric bills could go up as much as 20%. And that's
Number.
Specifically due to the fact that we import so much energy and so much oil. Kauai is not subject to this. Why? Because they have such a significant penetration of renewables already, that energy hike is not going to affect them as much.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Stellar.
And when we 20% out here, man, is not a small thing.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at
that's
bills.
Crazy. We're at 33.
Cents per kilowatt hour. Yeah, actually, the rates vary per island. Oahu, Hawaii, and Maui. And I think that the bottom line is that your average bill is probably in the $300 territory right now for just a regular home, right? Easy. And so 20% on that, you do the math, you're getting upwards of high threes now, right? So that's that's a pinch, and you're already paying more for gas, right? So gas is in the fives, and this mid fives, high fives I've seen as much out here recently. So you're already getting dinged on gas. If you got two cars, you probably already $100 north a month, if not $200 north a month on gas if you're actually commuting. And then you've got another 50, $100 in actual utility costs, electricity costs. So that's not a small thing for families out here that are just trying to control costs, and especially coming out of the pandemic and looking for, hey man, we just came out of a tough time. We weren't all making money. And now it's like, boom, we get nailed by this thing people are not, I think, very permissive of this and not very kind of patient with this at this point. That's my feeling on it. So to see KIUC, this example, say, hey, it's only going to hit us by about 2 to maybe 8%, I think was the numbers they were throwing around. So a lot less. And of course, we know that they're even moving further down the road with this pump storage hydro system. Now, that being said, let's be fair, right? Kauai's electricity is actually typically more expensive, right, at the cooperative. Presumably that's because they've been investing in all of these projects and making it come together to get to 100% renewables. But at least they're not seeing the volatility that we're seeing in the other islands or across the country. So that's something pretty special.
Which is a big deal, and that's the super positive takeaway for this, is that because they've already made a significant investment, they are not subject to the energy volatility of the rest of the planet.
There you go. Not a small thing. Not a small thing. I see a bit of a delay here. I don't know if you're catching it, Jay. So I'm going to try to like pause and then pick up, so we can stay on the, keep it from jumping on top of each other's words. But we've got a delay in the back and forth. But the bottom line is, I think it's interesting too. You look at the pictures here. They got this picture of David Bissell, president CEO of KIUC, and they got him wearing sunglasses, wearing an Aloha shirt. He looks kind of gangster. Like he looks like he's in charge in that picture, doesn't it? I like that picture of him, man. He looks like he's like, he's like, hey man, we're doing our own thing out here. This is David wearing the sunglasses. He looks pretty cool. And then of course they've actually got some great images of what's of the solar arrays. These are the same ones that they sent me for our videos, right? The same actual what do you call it, B-roll. So very cool. I know they're mentioning a little bit here about Jim Kelly, and he is the spokesman for HECO. Now, Jim was on the show probably about a year ago. I like Jim a lot. He was able to talk about all of the, them working on the utility systems for Oahu, Maui, Molokai, Lanai, Big Island, and that they're, that he's impressed. In fact, he's like kind of giving a nod to David Bissell and saying, hey man, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get there. You guys are kind of leading the way. I thought that was cool to see Jim Kelly saying that about David Bissell. So nice job to KIUC.
The co-op has the ability to do stuff because, like I said, they're not investor owned. They don't have those kind of pulls on their reins, but they also have a lot less area and users to service. Right. So being a smaller grid, they're able to roll out stuff pretty quickly. I mean, I do feel for the Hawaii Electric Company's folks every time they're trying to do something, because it's always a long conversation. It's always a big set of community meetings and investor meetings and meetings, and then studies, environmental impact studies of every kind, right? It is such a difficult situation to be in, because you want to get stuff done, but you can't, or at least you can't move nearly as fast as you would like. So
yeah, and they talk about the average bill increases they expect, et cetera, et cetera. They're pretty modest in these estimates, but they also mentioned they get a pretty good analysis of the overall energy picture here throughout the islands. They talk about PGV, the Puna Geothermal over in Big Island, and how that was shut down for a while, but now it's operating. So that gives you some firm. So they kind of give a nice overview. If you guys want to check that out, what was the name of that? So people can see it. It's actually a really good overview. March 15th, Civil Beat, Kauai quit using oil to produce most of its electricity years ago. That's paying off now. We recommend checking that out. Very good stuff there, Jay.
Another big question I have is, do you ever expect the prices to come back down?
Are you asking me that question?
Just
for Hawaii?
Personally, or just us? It's in my experience, it's been that once the price goes up, it's not coming back.
But there is a okay, so we are in a time, we had Jenny Potter on, Public Utility Commissioner, lives here in Maui, in the beginning of 2021 for the Hawaii Energy Conference 2021. And she was talking about performance-based rates, performance-based regulation, PBR, and how that was being instituted back in the summer of 2021, and the timeframes and how that will be evaluated over what periods of time. And that has everything to do with them being the utility, being controlled under a different kind of mechanism, right? And being awarded financially and financial incentives under a different structure. And it has to do with how they go about transitioning from fossils to renewables, and the actual formula that we discussed kind of eludes me at the moment. But so when we talk about whether prices are going to, come back down, I do think look, that volatility, we've seen that go up and go down over the years. That has happened. I would say we would trend downwards over the next decade or so, because the abundance of renewables going in will kind of inevitably do that. I think the problem will be in the amount of trending downwards. I think it won't satisfy people. It'll be modest, right? And that's my personal opinion of what will probably happen. But then if you want to really trend downwards, then you gotta get your own renewable energy system. And the good thing is the ROI on these things, the simple payback period with current incentives in place, are pretty banging. Like, and I was just talking with a couple of guys about these, and I'm not selling solar systems, guys. So I'm not out here trying to,
Not
those
anymore.
days are past. But I do think that that's the route to go, right? So you put in a solar system, you have federal tax credits, the state tax credits, according to some contacts that I just spoke with, actually changed January 1st. I have to review them. They're probably penciled similarly as they have in the past, but they're worded and structured differently. And then now you have in places like Oahu and potentially soon places like Maui, you have battery rebates available based on the size of those batteries, not the kilowatt hours, but rather the kilowatts. And so those battery rebates are working to further subsidize solar plus battery systems being deployed in Oahu. And hopefully we'll see that happen here in Maui soon too. But the bottom line is when you do that, it squeezes that simple payback period down even further from, whatever you're comfortable, assumption that you're comfortable making it at. It's probably 5, 6, 7 years or something like that at this stage of the game with solar plus battery, but getting it down maybe to the 3-4 year mark is where it could get really sexy and exciting. That's kind of back in the NEM, net energy metering, simple payback types of numbers. We get down to the 3-year period. That's a no-brainer, especially if you can come out of the gate and say, hey, somebody else finance it for me. You're not even using your own capital. You're borrowing probably with a low interest rate and then taking advantage of the tax credits. So yeah, you can get cheap electricity. It doesn't have to be high, but those are the routes to do it, I believe. So Jay, if we get a chance, is Isle of Hot next? I'm sorry to jump on that right away, but it's set up that way in my
yeah, Isle of Ho.
Isle of Ho. Oh, I said it wrong.
Yeah, we want to talk about that. It's off the coast of Maine. We've had discussions about them before, haven't actually had the chance to go yet, although we did go to Cutty-Hunk Island a couple times over the past few years. And these small little island microgrid managers, the directors of their local grids, kind of all know each other, on the East Coast, because they're all facing.
You remember
Wayne
Perrier just talking about that?
Yeah. So we know a little bit about this place. It made the news because they had been connected to the mainland grid with an undersea cable, but that cable has been aging out and is now massively over. It's a ticking time bomb, and they're going to be disconnected. So all this time, like 2015, I think they started serious discussions about having cutting that cable or letting it go, and then building their own island microgrid, which is pretty innovative stuff in 2015. Now it's a little more well known, but it seems that they're rolling back. Just unsure whether they would be able to maintain the technology. They're not confident in having the system work, which is interesting because it's kind of contrary to what we've seen out there.
It's too small. It's too small.
It's too small.
Yeah, that's it.
And Cutty-Hunk is not.
Well, okay. So let's talk about that. So first of all, Cutty-Hunk had some pretty savvy individuals get a grant for the system.
Sure.
Right. They got an airplane flying by. So now they didn't have to, and I remember hearing that at one point in their initial discussion. But then I as we went into the secondary and you and I visited over the summer, I was talking to him and I was like, hey, do you think it'll pencil out? And then he said, oh yeah, I'm sure it will. And then I thought to myself, well, there's a grant. Of course it will, because the bulk of it was funded. Right.
Right.
So they had a different dynamic. But that being said, it is comparable, I think, in population. I think it's something like here it's 40 to like 140, and there it's meaning Island of Ho. Is that how you pronounce that? Island of Ho.
Isle of Ho.
Isle of Ho. And in Cuddy, I want to say it's like almost nobody in the winter, like 12 people to like 400 or something. I think it's what Wayne said.
3 and right? A few dogs.
Yeah, a few dogs. And so sizing, I mean, they're in the same kind of zone or whatever, but you had a grant to be able to make that pencil. So the bottom line is there's just not a lot of people that you're providing electricity to kind of spread those capital costs over. And so that's probably what this was. Was that your read or no?
I mean, it's not like there's no funding out there for this type of stuff. So they could conceivably go out and find a grant or whatever.
Yeah, but that has to be pretty creative.
Federal monies are being made available for this type of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just the initiative to go and find it. It looks like that initiative doesn't exist.
Well, maybe we can get Wayne to call him up and say, "Hey guys, may want to reconsider."
It's probably this is the mission for the solar coaster, right?
There you go, right? I'll tell you what, Jay. You know, we after I visited you guys in Plymouth and before you came out from Japan on the trip, we were up in Maine. We were up in Acadia, and then we were reading about Isle Ho. I'm having a hard time with that. So we were reading about that. And we were thinking there's a trip you can take out there, right? And it was I was reading like in a restaurant. I was reading about it. I'm like, well, this is pretty cool. This is a lot like Cuddy. You know, I remember thinking that. And they have like a mail boat that they bring kids to come in to go to school. I think we might even met someone that lived there. You know, like working in one of the restaurants. We were chatting with them. So yeah, really kind of unique place, probably freezing in the wintertime, right? You know, like up really far north, and probably a pretty relatively extreme set of conditions. That might be part of it too, in the wintertime. But
so I guess it's plays a significant role in it. They were talking about the batteries not having a very good lifespan,
right?
And that's specifically because of the temperature extremes they have to deal with.
There you go. And then the distance, I wonder what that distance is. I don't think it's as far as Cuddy is from the mainland. Of course, Cuddy is the end of an archipelago pretty much, right? But I think that the Isle of Ho might be a bit closer. So I wonder if they're talking about, does it say in there they're talking about, you know, how to deal with the existing line or replace the line? Is that
it's going to have to be replaced? There's really no other option. It's sunk into the mud so deep that they can't pull it back up and do repairs, which is part of the issue.
I gotcha. Isle of Ho, love Acadia. Those are beautiful places in the world. It's exciting to see that. Well, we'll have to keep tabs on that and see what they actually do to deal with these, if they actually go ahead and make that change with the cable.
Well, call Wayne and point him in that direction.
Yeah, very good.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Enphase because that's our main feature today. But I don't know how to pronounce this. I want to say Ikoma because that's a local mountain here.
This looks like Elon Musk's kid's name. Whatever's going on with that thing.
Weird company name, but it's a European power company, and they have just partnered with Enphase to roll out another virtual power plant. And we know a little bit about virtual power planting because of our conversations with Sonnen Energy. They run virtual power plants in Germany and largely throughout Europe. Virtual power planting is basically where you roll out a whole lot of in-home batteries. So you have a battery in your home. It's part of your energy storage system, solar and battery. But then the utility can fill or drain the battery to help offset demands. Other services are like just synchronization of the AC sine wave. There's a lot of benefits for having all these little distributed energy storage systems out there, and Enphase is probably going to be the next really, really big one. They have some unique features where they either form grids or will attach to the grid, but you don't actually need storage at all. So if solar is on and you're not connected to a grid, it will just start its own little grid for you.
The IQ8s. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can now, right as I'm kind of getting back into this, first of all, they've got these massive goals, right? So this is a company that's talking in terms of timelines in decades. They're saying by the end of 2030, by around 2030, we want to have equipped 1.5 million buildings in Europe. That's a heck of a goal for a company with photovoltaic storage systems, recharging solutions for electric vehicles, and heat pumps, right? Those are great things because those are all really valuable assets.
This is Germany, remember, and they have a mandate now that any new construction from January this year has to have a photovoltaic system installed. It's a requirement.
Gotcha. It sounds like they're very close to the front line of this by working directly with the installation companies, and they've got a dozen locations around Germany and Sweden.
Yeah.
They got a CEO, Badri Kothandaram, and I can just imagine, he says, by providing granular access to homeowners' clean energy assets such as PV, battery, EV charging stations, heat pumps, we can enable his company to offer additional energy services. So, but I can just imagine him sitting down with Raghu, and Raghu talking about the new grid of grids, right? And rebuilding the grid from the inside out, which is what we're going to get in this interview. And this fellow, Badri, going, "Yeah, you're our guy. We want your tech. We want that." He uses the term like the marketplace of buyers and sellers, right? That must have fit right in line with their goals here. So very, very cool. And it's interesting. Enphase is such an interesting company, right? It's like these guys have pioneered the microinverter. They're in this, they're devout believers in the AC coupled kind of strategy for PV. And
define that for people.
Yeah, and basically, they have AC microinverters, and those are each of the panels. They have an inverter under each individual panel. That's the hallmark of Enphase's technology, the micro inverter, as opposed to having, if you have a dozen panels, then you have one central inverter, or in the case of DC optimized systems like SolarEdge, you have little DC optimizers, which look a little bit like microinverters, but everything is, all the inversions happening at one central on the side of the house. So you've got these kind of different architecture for the inverter side of the picture. In the case of Enphase, they pioneered the microinverter in panel level optimization. And there's all these great benefits we've learned about over the years, right? From we're talking about, I mean, I don't know if these guys got 20 years under their belt, but they've got to be getting close to that, right?
Sure.
So we're talking about all these nuanced little advantages in the AC coupled world. First of all, ease of installation. And these are things we've revisited over the years many times, but ease of installation and design, very simple to put in. It took PV from this complex thing of how do exactly we do this on this given roof line to just plug and play pretty much, right? And then anybody could become a PV installer. And that's actually how we kind of got into it at my company earlier. And then, but also as it evolved and grew and became smarter and smarter, started to do other things, and more recently with the IQ8s, they're probably on their, like, they started out with like the M130s or something, or like early on. And then now they're all the way up to these IQ8s after dozens of iterations. And, now they're doing really remarkable things, and they've added storage, and we're going to learn about this stuff from Raghu in this interview, but there are little nuanced advantages in this AC coupled kind of, the way of thinking about inversion. And some of them are like you wouldn't think about, right? For example, when you AC couple, you're creating in DC, you're inverting into AC, and then you're basically transmissioning that AC energy into your loads, right? But in the case of storage, you then need to rectify. Is that the right word, Jay? Rectify from AC back to DC to charge the batteries. So there's inherent losses in those multiple stages, right? Going from the DC on the panel to the AC in your house, throughout your house loads, and then getting down to a battery on the side of the house, and then going back to DC. So people think to themselves, well, and of course Tesla is an AC coupled architecture as well, right? The most popular one out there. But and of course it's more efficient. Round trip efficiencies are better in DC coupled systems, right? So like SolarEdge, which is what I'm going to have on my house with their new battery, and I like that efficiency, and that's why I chose that. However, there are other advantages in the AC coupled world and in the microinverter panel level optimization world, which is kind of interesting. They talk about turning on with lower voltages, I think, right? Earlier in the day, they have, and later, and turning off later. So you have a broader window. Does that equal the losses? I don't know. I mean, it's like, so, there's a handful of other interesting advantages in terms of ease of installation and simplicity that seems to have mirrored itself even in the solar plus storage world. I've talked to guys that are putting in the new Ensemble batteries. In fact, I got a call from a past client that put one in. I spoke to Damon, who has done a handful of them here in Maui, of Jackson Electric. He's going to be helping me out with some installs soon. And, he talks about it's a pretty simple solution, and he likes it, right? He was very positive about Enphase. And they recently, by the way, I don't know if you heard this one, Jay, they reduced their price per kilowatt hour pricing considerably. When it first came out, it was pretty high. It was priced out of the market. But over the course of the last year, maybe they reduced it. So it's a very reasonable number, and it's right up there competing with the best of the other technologies, namely Generac, Tesla, SolarEdge is coming into market now with their complete offering. But then of course, all the other guys, I don't know how the other guys are doing, the Evervolts and the SunPower Equinoxes and all the other, ones that were kind of chomping biting at the bit. But anyway, so the AC coupled technology is, and the advantages there, I could see in the simplicity when you're trying to hit a goal like 1.5 million buildings retrofitted. I could see that simplicity being very attractive. Is my point. Okay, so I get it. I get it.
Took a long time to get there.
It did. Yeah, it did.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about hydrogen. Hydrogen in the news pretty much every time you turn around these days. One of the things you sent me was actually from Car Scoops, which is a website I had not heard of, but okay.
I don't know where I found this
they're talking about Honda making fixed fuel cell generators. This is a really big shift for hydrogen fuel cell, right? They've traditionally been in a few cars. There was conversation about having the little fuel cell laptops a number of years ago that kind of were all the rage in the news and then disappeared. never showed up again.
Fuel cell laptops.
This is a use case for hydrogen where I really think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because these are, it comes as a, this particular package is for like data centers, places you absolutely need power up and running all the time, whether or not the grid goes up and down. A lot of data centers in California, for example, but they have rolling blackouts. I mean, you got real problems trying to run a data center in an environment like that, because you cannot have the servers just crash. You cannot have the AC go off because everything will cook itself. You need that power and you need it stable. They've traditionally been using regular diesel generators for this type of stuff. You know, you have a big generator that fires up when the power goes out, and they burn a lot of fuel. But there's problems with that. Like if you don't use the generator for a while, it may have issues simply starting. The fuel gets old. It needs constant maintenance, and it's a big mechanical thing. So those types of problems come from traditional generator technology. This fuel cell box, four boxes, looks to be about this. I mean, it's hard to get scale on this particular photo, the image that they have, but it looks like it's the size of kind of a large HVAC kind of system you would see on the back of a building. So there's 4 of these boxes, but it is a megawatt of AC power that it will generate. These things, that's a significant amount of juice. So
that is a lot of juice. And then they didn't give any costing, did they?
No, it's a proof of concept. It's actually going to be run on Honda's own data center right now, just to see if this will actually function as they expect it to. They're still running with this old, the bluish ocean looking Power of Dreams graphic, which I absolutely hate. It's so 20 years ago.
Power of Dreams.
But the technology inside is really cool. The problem, I mean, like I said, it's absolutely great because it's a fuel cell type system. There's very little in mechanical components that can go wrong. There's obviously, I mean, chemical and flow issues you could deal with, but hydrogen, if it's contained, doesn't go bad. I mean, hydrogen, it's not gonna sit there and stagnate and go stale on you. It just is what it is, and you can conceivably keep it there for years. Yes. Without firing up. It's not something you can do with a diesel generator. It's also super fast to start, because as soon as you introduce the hydrogen into the system, it starts generating electricity.
There's no delay period, ramp up period, as there would be in a diesel generator.
Right.
Yeah, generators are not cheap, right? They're expensive, and they require maintenance, and they require, you have to someone has to be on site. There's annual checks, like you said, the fuel and the oil, the DEF, all that stuff needs to be kind of managed, right?
Not to mention the noise and the smell.
Right. And you have that delay, which I think must be relevant. They must have some kind of UPS to kind of manage that delay.
There's always a little battery system that kind of buffers that for data center use.
There was, I don't know if you saw that other article I sent you about the home fuel cell from the Australian company, very small. It was like, they were comparable to like Tesla power packs, but the quote was, I thought, telling. Let me see if I can find it real fast, Jay. I really liked it. It was, where is it? It's right here. Oh yeah, here we go. So this is a Australian company, and I happen to have some experience with Australians. So I thought it was great language, right? And so they're asking them about the safety of these systems, right? And this is basically the same. And this is, by the way, this is called, what is this called? Lavo. right? Lavo.
Mhm.
So it's like a resi version of the one Jay's describing right now. And he goes, inherently no more dangerous than other conventional fuels such as gasoline or natural gas, but it's fair to say it could really get a party started in the rare event that a house fire managed to reach it. What a quote, man.
And again, you could say the same thing about your propane tanks or the gas in your car, but
it could really get a party started. They're saying this thing goes boom.
It's a lovely way of looking at the world, isn't it?
Those guys are great. They're just like, it's just so, it's, I could, if you ask me, like,
so
who said that?
Yeah.
Like, it's an Australian guy.
So the point is being able to do this. This is, like I said, it's a really good use case for hydrogen. I don't know if I like hydrogen at home, in the home. I don't think I like hydrogen as like personal vehicle. For fleet vehicles,
yeah,
150% all day long.
For fleet, I understand the fleet vehicle versus personal vehicle just based on energy densities and ease of use with the batteries and things of that nature, I suspect.
What's handling?
But handling
the. I mean, you've seen people
dealing with hydrogen.
Yeah, well, with hydrogen, it needs to be handled appropriately. It's under pressure. Yeah. It's cold. You know, you can't just walk up to a gas station and kind of, you've seen people at the gas station, they tap the nozzle and waiting for one to create a spark and blow people up, or they're sitting there with their phone, not supposed to be doing that either, smoking at the gas pump, all these things that people do that are bad.
Smoking at the hydrogen pump. Let's see if we can catch it. Yeah. I get what you're saying. So it's not really a great resi solution from your perspective, but it's more of something that's controlled in a professional environment. It could work wonders, basically.
Mid to large scale. And it, like I said, it has all these benefits of not degrading over time. You get tremendous amount of energy out of it. Fuel cell, not so much. I think fuel cells are like between 53 and 56% of your overall energy input. But as I've said before, if you were going, but if you were generating your hydrogen with renewables that were otherwise going to be wasted or not used, then it's free energy. So you're getting 56% of free.
Right. Right. It would, and that's really important for people to get their head around, right? That this is not, that efficiency loss in the fuel cell is not something in this scenario of green hydrogen.
And it's getting better.
Yeah. Is not something that is comparable to like looking at efficiencies in production, really.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. Well, I
want to talk about dust. You like dust.
I love dust. Yeah.
I know.
So we've got a company out here that's working on what's the name of this article? It's working on new ways to clean solar panels, right? And then it's funny because I was talking with Jay about it, and the title of the article, it's The Independent: Solar Panels That Repel Dust Can Save 10 billion gallons of drinking water every year. And Jay goes, well, no one cleans their solar panels anyway, right? Which is kind of true. I mean, it's really true because, when you, even the solar farms that I know of, and people don't want, like in the resi world anyway, when it's not really a company looking at a P&L and a baseline of revenue, it's just a cost. People are like, I don't want to pay someone to get up on my roof, maybe fall off the roof and sue me. It's like, they just kind of put that thing off. And there have been solutions over the years. There's been little sprinkler systems like for grass, like for your lawns. I remember when they came out like decade and a half ago, and I was like, oh my goodness, we're putting up, there was certain soaps you could buy and stuff.
I've seen people out there with a little gun,
there's people out there
by yourself,
they're washing them with like, you have little solar panel washing services. I'll tell you what, those guys never last long, not in Maui. They're here for like about a month or a year or something, and then they just disappear, and there's another guy comes in and he's like, I'm going to take over the solar panel cleaning business. It's just a hard business, right? Getting up on roof doing that. And then, but it is important and it does make a difference. There's no doubt about it.
Up to 30%.
I cleaned these little bifacials I was messing around with the other day. They were dirty. I fixed them up and I was watching the actual wattage, and it was just, the change was remarkable, instantaneous. It went from, it just boomed up considerably because they were dirty. So we're talking next
time you do that, I want you to document it. Like, get me data.
I have screenshots. I'll send you the screenshots of the Victron, the Bluetooth data from the app. But the bottom line is that they're looking at other ways to do this. Now, to in fairness, to talk about some of the additional things that are actually out there, we've seen over the years, Jay, they have little robots for utility scale or commercial scale systems that roll back and forth on these arrays. Maybe they're 2 or 3 panels deep, and they're like, a football field long, and it's like a little robot, like kind of Roomba looking thing for solar panels, right? But those are attached to tanks. There's water. Sometimes there's soap. Who knows? It's a fairly intensive, labor process.
A traditional washing system. Yeah.
You're washing it. Yeah. So they're trying to find other solutions. Now, before we get to this, I got one more for you. We got companies like Enduro Shield with Gary Dolberg, and the fellas' names are escaping me right now. It'll come to me in a little bit. Unique name, the CEO and the leaders down out in San Diego, an Australian company, Enduro Shield. And they basically have a coating that works on glass to protect glass. It also has these oleophobic and hydrophobic oil kind of shedding and water shedding characteristics, and it keeps them cleaner, right? As a consequence. So you have that as a mechanism, which I think is interesting. And then now we've got this. Now, what is going on here? This is the first time I've seen this static charge conversation. Can you explain the technology behind it?
It's relatively simple. Is that you generate a static charge around a plate and basically wave it over, and you've seen what happens to fuzz and dust and stuff when you rub a balloon. It's pretty much the same thing. So you can collect dust by
the dust attracted to the plate, or
static charge. So
plate?
it's not actually in contact with the panel. It's just like very, very close to it, and they just pass that across. All the dust gets stuck to the panel as it
like
goes.
A wand in a sense.
It's relatively simple. The problem is to do that at scale is much more difficult.
Right.
If you're not going to have somebody just rubbing balloons on their head and around all the different solar panels. The system itself needs to be cleaned. You need to be able to turn on and off the charge, because that's when everything drops off. Like if you can actually turn the charge off, the dust will just settle out. And they've been using it for a long time, like in NASA uses it to clean solar panels and satellite components, things that are going to space. They don't want any particulate of any kind, right? So in the clean room environment, they can quickly go around a unit and sterilize it pretty much completely. But out in the real world, it's been very difficult to do because of, obviously humidity. This whole static thing doesn't work. It works better in the winter, doesn't work in summer, doesn't work so well in environments like Hawaii because it's warm and humid. But they seem to have cracked the code. That's kind of the thing here, is that these researchers at MIT have figured out how to make it work in much more standard, much more humid, much more normal air environments, especially where we tend to roll out a lot of solar, like large hot deserts and islands.
Yeah. Look, anything water hits home kind of especially for me, because I live on catchment. You've heard me say many times. So I'm kind of like very sensitive to the notion of water. No one in this house will leave a water faucet on for more than a few seconds. And no one needs to yell at anyone because we've been without water before, right? So it's like, it's like on, wash your hands, rinse, it's that kind of deal in this house. That being said, the quality of the water is amazing because it's just from the sky. But so the notion of how to protect water, to me, is kind of something that I think about a lot. And I think that this is a great potential solution. I would like to understand better the costing of it and the practical. I like to see it done in real world conditions. I can imagine we're going to probably have a suite of technologies to make cleaning of panels more effective. And it may be that something like an Enduro Shield is applied as a standard to panels in the future, so they just collect less stuff as a standard, right? They just don't have as much on them over a given period of time in a given set of conditions. And then maybe something like this can be used to, make an impact as well. And then there's probably going to need to be cleaning, but maybe it's not cleaning every year or 6 months. Maybe it's cleaning every 2 years, and you save gallons that way. So, but what very cool.
Targeting specifically is like desert installs or dry, dusty, arid areas where you get a tremendous amount of dust, but it's dust storms. So I think cleaning would be intermittent, right? You clean it when you see it drop below a certain threshold.
Yeah. Well, it's also the kind of thing where it sounds like the way that technology works, it could be a permanently fitted tech on an array. These arrays tend to be like a linear, like just one pathway of panels. So maybe it's something that could be there and you could Yes. Oh, the dust is settled. Okay, turn it on. There it goes.
Yeah, it just runs down. Maybe it runs once a week. Who knows?
That's
Whatever it is.
attractive.
But I still think it would be threshold based because it has a chart. It uses the electricity that the array is generating, right? So it needs by turning it on a regular basis, you are reducing output. So turn it on when you need it, not
only if you do it during the daytime.
Oh,
do it at night, man.
Fine, that's easy. But regardless, there is no commercial product yet. This is still simply it's a white paper from MIT, and they know how to do it. It's not something you can buy just yet.
Did they was the white paper there? Could you access the PDF?
Yes. Yep. It's down the bottom of the
Sunday reading for JPO.
It's called electrostatic dust removal using absorbed moisture assisted charge induction for sustainable operation of solar panels.
Yay. Yay.
Love it.
Love it. All right. Now that we've reached peak geek, let's do this. I think it's time to jump over to one of our favorite guests of all time, 4-time contributor and friend of the Solar Coaster, Mr. Raghu Belur. What was his titles again, Jay? You said him a second ago.
Chief Product Officer and co-founder. I mean, the co-founder part is the big deal. He's one of the original visionaries.
All right, let's dive deep into Raghu Belur's mind and see what's going on with Enphase. Going to. There we go. Okay, here we go.
Perfect.
And I'm gonna go 3, 2, 1. Aloha and welcome to the Solar Coaster live show here for Solar Power International North America Smart Energy Week. Got one of my favorite guests of all time, really, from the radio show and from the trade show work, Mr. Raghu Belur of Enphase, founder of Enphase. How are you today, sir?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's always exciting to talk to you guys. It's been a while, so I'm looking forward to this discussion.
It has been a bit. And we remember our conversation, our last one in Salt Lake City, and we got so much out of that. And like I just said to you a minute ago, I woke Jason up in Japan and said, hey, I'm talking to Raghu today. Give me your best questions. So I know he's excited. He sends his regards. So let's jump right in here, Raghu. What is going on with Ensemble? Your new storage systems, I know there's a lot of buzz out there, a lot of excitement about this technology. Why don't we get caught up right away?
Yeah, absolutely. So just as a reminder for people, Ensemble is a energy management technology that incorporates a bunch of different resources, and the goal being to treat a home as a microgrid and build this highly resilient, self-reliant microgrid. And Ensemble, as the energy management technology, kind of brings it all together. It can manage solar, your storage, load control, the grid itself, generator, and someday fuel cells, EV, etc. All of those things can be managed through this energy management technology that we have developed. And of course, as you can imagine, today, the core element of that technology starts with of course, our IQ7 microinverter along with energy storage. And the energy storage market for us has been absolutely fantastic. It's growing at an unbelievable clip. We've been in the market now for about a year with our Enphase storage solution, and it's been really, really well adopted, and the growth rate also has been quite phenomenal. So we are very excited about it. And then the other, what should I call it? The star of Ensemble is this IQ8 microinverter, which is the world's first grid agnostic microinverter that's about to launch. We are going to launch it in this month. It's going to start shipping. And that's a fully grid agnostic microinverter. Just as a reminder, the big breakthrough there for us was, if you think about the fundamental limitation, as I refer to, of solar, is that it's grid tied, meaning if the grid fails for any reason, and even if the sun may be shining, you've got all these modules on the roof, it's not going to produce any power. That we think is really, the promise of solar isn't met when you have a grid-tied solar system. What we have done is crack the code on is, hey, all the available irradiance, it's going to convert solar only. So think about a daytime backup system, if you may. So here you buy solar and, hey, whatever available sun, I'm going to convert regardless of whether the grid is present or not. And that, I think, is going to be a pretty big game changer. I mean, why would anybody want to buy a grid-tied solar system anymore? Of course, you add energy storage to it, and now you have a pretty resilient system that works both during the day and at night.
That is quite, it's so funny. We tend to talk when there's something really exciting happening. It's almost like this kind of, hey, I'm about to launch some groundbreaking inverter, and then I knock on your door and I start talking with you. So it's great timing. I'm excited about this idea of grid agnostic microinverter. So really we're talking about, as I understand it, and because we talked about this earlier, the notion of a system that can form and create energy and meet loads during the daytime without energy storage. And that's correct, right?
That's 100% correct. There is no energy storage, and this system will form the grid in the absence of one. By the way, if the grid is present, great. If the grid's not present, great. It's going to synthesize the grid in the absence of it, and it's going to balance the microgrid. Because remember, part of it is not just sufficient to form the grid. When the loads change, when the load drops, I have to match precisely that drop in the load. That's what a microgrid does. And the reaction time of IQ8 is about 1,000 times faster than even an IQ7. So it reacts to changing loads extremely quickly. So if the load drops, the output of solar will curtail because there is no grid. I don't have any place to put it. I don't even have storage for that matter to put it. But it matches exactly what that load is. And if the load bumps up again, it instantly matches it, and it operates like a perfect microgrid. And that's what we are going to launch. That's IQ8 by itself. But remember, it is a core part of the overall Ensemble energy management technology. So if you have only IQ8, and the grid, that's great, and the grid goes away, no problem, IQ8 continues to operate. You may have IQ8 along with some load control. And in that case, you can say, hey, I have a solar-only system, I should probably shed some non-essential loads. Or you can say, no, I've got solar, I can afford to add some storage. And in our case, our storage is a 3.3 kilowatt hour building block. So you can choose. I can say, I only want 3.3 kilowatt hours. So I got a 6 kilowatt IQ8 system on my roof, and I got only 3.3 kilowatts of storage, and I'll do essential load backup only.
That's amazing.
That use case also works.
It's
or
amazing.
You can go all the way and all in and go, hey, I'm going to put 7 kilowatts of PV, I'm going to put 20 kilowatt hours of storage, and I'm going to back everything up. I will do whole home backup, and I may do some load rejection, like my hot tub. I don't want to back that up. All of that is possible now. All of that controlled and managed with a beautiful app that runs on your phone.
There's so many questions I have for you here, but we need to talk a little bit about Ensemble as a storage system and what you have with that modularity. That's key because that's fundamentally different than most of the offerings in market today as well. And then we have this IQ8, which is basically a whole new ballgame. And we have the notion of load controls, which I think is also kind of unmarketed in and of itself, right? So you're handling a lot of territory here. And so let's do this. Let me ask you, before we jump into some of those specifics, where do you see this going in its entirety? Where do you see this going in its entirety? Because you're tackling different, what up until now has been different pieces of the emerging solar plus battery marketplace. And now they're all coming in at one spot. Where is this all going?
Oh, that's an awesome question. You know, we have a grand vision. I have a very clear view on where I think the world is going, right? That's the danger of having grand visions and working towards it. But I do have a grand vision. And the grand vision here is that that every home should be a self-reliant, resilient microgrid. It'll have a number of resources. When I mean resources, solar obviously is a resource. The grid itself is a resource. Managing, controlling loads is actually a resource. Load effectively becomes a resource because I can vary how much I consume if I have really intelligent load control, right? EV, eventually going to bidirectional EV is actually a very powerful resource, whether that is vehicle to grid or vehicle to microgrid. I believe that vehicle to microgrid will be a more viable scenario. We are working on fuel cells, so residential fuel cell. All of these means that no matter what the environment is, no matter what the situation is, if the grid is present or whatever the environment is, I save money. It's good for my wallet. I have great resiliency, which means no matter what happens to the grid, I can sustain myself for a very long period of time because I have all of these resources available in the home. Not only do I have all of these resources, I have a very intelligent system to manage and control all of my resources, right? So I have a very resilient system as well. What this really means is what we are building is the home as a microgrid. But think about it a little bit beyond that, right? If you think about one home as a microgrid, my neighbor is also a microgrid. Can I now start pooling these microgrids together to form pools of microgrids? And this is very recursive in nature. And you can think about entire neighborhoods, entire cities, then forming microgrids with a big difference. This microgrid is created from the inside out, from the home upwards, not from tops down like people think about microgrids today. So you, in a sense, what you're doing is reinventing the entire grid from the inside out. Homes will start transacting energy with each other. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity to do lots of machine learning, AI systems in there that make decisions, autonomous decisions. These DERs are now becoming so intelligent. They're all making autonomous decisions. I joke about this, but it will come to reality, I think, is my neighbor's washing machine wants to run and it puts out a bid on a marketplace. Yeah. All the homes are a marketplace. My solar panels modules respond to that bid and saying, yeah, hey, I will be the lowest cost. Why? My batteries are full. My owner's on vacation. I really don't have anywhere else to put this energy in. Why don't I bid for that job? And there'll be other systems also bidding for it. But all of this will happen in the background. It'll be very transparent to the user, but it will absolutely maximize provide the best economics for all participants in those pools of microgrids.
Well, there's so much there. There's so much meat on that bone, Raghu. So when we talk about something like this, it feels like energy has traditionally been a controlled market, very controlled monopoly in many respects, right? Marketplace. Now you're talking about decentralizing that, creating this grassroots up from the bottom, almost like a democratized energy marketplace. That's very freeing. It's very idealistic. Are you an activist? It sounds. It's
no,
very.
I still believe that it will be economics driven. That's really important. That it will be economics driven because I don't have to. I mean, there'll be a market clearing price, and I will provide the best service to my neighbor if I don't have a need for myself, right? So it will be market driven. Absolutely, it needs to be market driven. That's really important. But I think you will find that if you let the markets play out in this manner, you'll have a very, very efficient system, which means you'll have the best economics, you'll have the highest resiliency, and most important of all, you'll have a renewable, clean system, right?
Absolutely.
That's delivering this great promise.
Absolutely. How far, the vision, I asked you for the vision first, right out of the gate. How far is something like that away? Are we talking about years or decades? I mean, is this something that you see forming in, I know it's so difficult to pin numbers on it, but is this something you'll start to see happening, soon?
Absolutely. I think you're looking at, in my view, 5 years, right? I think you're going to start seeing elements of it in 5 years. The one player that we cannot marginalize or ignore in this is the utility, right? They have to be an active participant in this because it's their infrastructure. They've already invested. There's a lot to learn from them. Their infrastructure has to be, their infrastructure has to be part of this grand vision. So today if you look at, we are already doing elements of this grand vision. For example, my house is a pretty resilient microgrid. I can, from my app, from the Enphase app, I can hit a button and I go off grid. And there've been, I think last summer I was running off grid as a microgrid, as a fully resilient. I've got enough solar and enough storage and some amount of load control that I was, off grid for 60 days. In the summer, it was absolutely possible to do that.
60 days, wow.
60 days, I was running off grid and I'm connected to my local utility. And then I decided one day, okay, this experiment is okay, I have the utility, I should just connect back to it. And from the app, I was able to connect right back. So elements of this vision are already in play. And so when we talk about all of these things, and your comment about, hey, there's a lot here, there's load control in and of itself is a big deal, and so is storage, and so is solar, and so is EV, etc. But it all is, we are on track with on track, marching down towards a grand vision of ours, which is this notion of a home being a microgrid, and then the ability to pool microgrids and energy being transacted. Now, coming back to the notion of, like I said, we cannot ignore or marginalize our friends in the utility business, because they have to be part of this vision. Otherwise, it's not going to work, right? In my view, you cannot be confrontational about this. They have to be part of it. And we are doing that today. It's called grid services, right? Today, we have a very intelligent system sitting in the background, sitting behind the meter with solar and storage and load control today. If the grid needs support, whether that is advanced grid function support, whether that is capacity support, or any other kind of a support, there's a good likelihood that we can provide it. And we can provide it in a manner that is a win-win-win. Win for the utility, win for the homeowner, of course, win for Enphase as well, but it can be done, okay? It can be done in a manner that everybody benefits from it. The utility doesn't have to turn on a polluting peaker plant, and if there is a capacity requirement, they make it very economical for the homeowner to participate, so the homeowner wins as well, and Enphase gets to manage these systems, which is pretty exciting. So I think there's some really exciting times ahead of us and a lot of opportunities.
Very good. And I agree with you. Of course, I share the sentiment that it's really exciting future. I did speak with Jason this morning. I did ask him his hard questions out in Osaka, and he said, we got to talk about interoperability, Josh. We have to know about security, about cybersecurity. How are we going to handle the bad actor factor? You know, people out there that are, or organizations out there that intend to do harm and may want to access this software and this hardware to do who knows what. What are your feelings on that? Let's tackle interoperability first. Is this something where you're going to have a refrigerator that's like a Enphase approved Panasonic fridge that works great with our system? Or is it something that's totally agnostic and works with everything that's already out there? You know, and then also, are you thinking about a proprietary kind of licensing type of thing, or is it more of a open source kind of thing? Can you give us some clarity on that?
Yeah, absolutely right. We have a lot of internal discussions. This is all in play. We are effectively building an Ensemble operating system, right? And that operating system basically means that many of these resources can participate on that operating system, right? When you talk about interoperability, what can be more interoperable than being in the AC domain? Being AC is the biggest standard that's out there. I can go anywhere in the US and it'll be 240 volts, 60 hertz. That's why if you look at why we went down the path of making everything AC coupled, right? Effectively, we took a dumb module, put an IQ8 or a 7 IQ8 in front of it, AC coupled it to your grid in the house. That's exactly what we did with storage as well. We took cells, lithium cells, put IQ8s in front of it, and now AC coupled it onto a universal platform. The universal platform is AC. So it's really important for when you think about interoperability, it really begins there. What's the power standard that you are going to adhere to? I'm really taking a knock on against DC coupled systems, because DC coupled systems, you know, everybody has their own standard. There is no standard. When everybody has a standard, it means that there is no standard. People can be at any levels, any DC voltage, and any interaction between them. And so it becomes much, much harder. That's why you'll see the world moving more and more towards AC coupled systems. And we were one of the first guys to launch an AC coupled battery very, very early on. And I took a lot of flack for that, going, hey, 2 power conversions, extra inverters, and all of this. And it's all been proven to be not correct. So having an AC coupled system, which is very modular, means that you can really benefit from being on a standard. Now, interoperability obviously doesn't end there. There's so many other vectors as well. If you look at things such as communication standard, there is standardization now taking place with IEEE 1547, 2018. If you look at things such as 2030.5, there is a lot of standardization that's taking place out there, and that's good. We all get to bring our own flavor into delivering the best value to our customers. However, at the same time, if there is some interconnection requirements, say with the utility as an example, that's getting more and more standardized. So there's I look at it as a good, healthy balance between real value that companies like ours can create, while at the same time playing nice with the grid as an example.
Gotcha. I'll tell you what, and there's certainly, I know that conversation of DC coupled versus AC coupled. And so you obviously have, kind of gone all in with all of your chips, so to speak, in the AC coupled camp, right? And I suppose the notion of less conversions doesn't warrant all of the extra benefits you just described in the AC coupled world. That's what it sounds like to me. Now, let me ask you this. There's a couple of audiences. This is kind of an additional piece here that are going to be watching this, right? We have the Solar Power International environment, and we also have the Hawaii environment. And I'll start out with Hawaii. It's a little smaller. So one of the things that's happening right now here in Hawaii, and I'm sure you're aware of this to a certain degree, but there is a new incentive program in Oahu, because we're by the way, Maui, I don't know if you saw the NREL study, but NREL is modeling 100% renewables for Maui right now for 2024. Yeah, Maui, right? And then Oahu, they're going to have some trouble with that because they don't have as much deployable space. They're talking about different solutions, and storage is a key piece of this puzzle. So they're modeling, they have a new incentive program where they pay customers to put in batteries. So what would you say to, I think you guys probably own about 40-50% of the market space, just guessing, out there in Oahu. Congratulations. So what would you say to all those people that have those IQ, what are they? I guess they were IQ
MCs,
or whatever. Oh, right. The 250s and all that.
Yeah, 250s, all the way back to the M175s and
M175.
Yeah.
I remember the ones.
The original ones. Yeah.
I remember those. What are these things? So now all these guys have them on their roof, early adopters, decade past almost, right? What would you say to them when they're trying to make that decision about batteries right now? Because right now with the ITC, the stateside tax credit still at 35%, and the new battery incentive for Oahu, that is a great place to deploy a boatload of storage. Do you have any messaging for them or anything you'd like to share with the people of Oahu?
Go Hawaii, go Hiko. I mean, this is amazing. Full credit to the people of Hawaii and Hiko as well. I think been very progressive. Look around. We talk about California being progressive, but I don't think anybody's as progressive and forward-thinking and aggressive when it comes to renewables as Hawaii and Hiko. Yeah. And so, we love the program. I think it's fantastic. This is the beauty of being an AC coupled solution. You can have an M series inverter on your roof. You can come in and add more PV if you want. By the way, this is latest generation of solar, of microinverters, because you'll have all the advanced grid functions to go with it. You can come in and add as much storage as you want. You really, when you purchased that Enphase system, even 5 years, 8 years ago, you really bought a future-proof system. Because this is a proof of that. You can come in and add all of the latest, greatest devices and really now turn your home, which was originally a grid-tied system, into a completely self-reliant microgrid. It can be done. And you can also have a storage system that actively participates in providing grid services to Hiko, which is what the incentive there is to provide. So you can scale up your solar system, you can scale up your storage system, you can right size your storage system and get both economics, resiliency, and grid services for the utility. Oh my God, that's great. It's super exciting. Josh, I don't want to forget your previous question around cybersecurity. Yep. You asked a really, really good question, and I want to make sure that I don't miss that question.
Thank you.
As you can imagine, we're in a pretty complex world right now, and you can imagine energy is a national security issue. It goes beyond cybersecurity, right? You can have bad actors sitting out there, and with all these grid connected inverters, and you can do some damage. And so we do pay an inordinate amount of attention to that. We have DOE programs that we are working on for hardening systems, etc. So I cannot go into a lot of details. Suffice it to say that this is a very, very big deal. And you can never have a perfect system, but we do the best we can to make sure that our systems, our customers are well taken care of, are safe from a cybersecurity point of view, and we really look at this very seriously. So a lot of work going on in that area. I think, like I said, the DOE is actively involved. There are a number of companies working on it as well. This is top of mind for a lot of people. So a lot of work going on in that area.
Well, thank you. We'll definitely continue to follow that discussion. There's a lot there. And of course, there's precedent for that. We have things like, Iran and the facility being, attacked, and other things happening in the energy space over the course of the last couple of years that are maybe showing us what's possible. And that's a big concern. So, okay. So we talked a little bit about Hawaii. By the way, before we jump off of Hawaii, I do want to say it feels really good to know that the people that bought a solar system, 7, 8, 9, whatever, how many years ago, can be part of all of this new exciting kind of world. Because I remember those people. I remember the kitchen table conversations. Yeah. I remember it was oftentimes it was like an older fellow, like a grandpa in Oahu that owned his house and was just like, I want to do the right thing, and got in early. So he isn't kind of out of the ball game because he was an early adopter. He's ready to be part of this. But just to be clear, if someone has one of those old, M250s or M175s, is it the kind of thing where it's directly connected to that existing system, or are we still replacing some of those inverters, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I think up to M250, you don't have to do any replacements. So M250, I'm not 100% sure about M215s, but M250 we are fully backward compatible. I think M215s also. The M series is backward compatible, which means now you can come in and add storage to it, and the combination of that solar plus storage, you can add load control as well to it. Down the road, you'll be able to add fuel cell to it. If you have a generator, you can add that into the system as well. All of those things are fully backward compatible. We are fully backward compatible all the way to the M series inverters. I'm not M175, which is about 15 years ago. So that's a long ways back. But hopefully, but also, there is value in upgrading your systems if possible from your M series to your IQ, because IQs also have all of these advanced grid function capabilities. They're all smart inverters. So what that allows, it also helps HECO out, because you can now provide grid voltage support and other AGF functions that actually help further kind of stabilize the grid and provide more resiliency to the grid itself.
Well, thank you for that. And you did mention fuel cell, you did mention generator, so probably should touch on that, because that's a heck of a thing. We are doing a hydrogen series on this overall show area. And so give me a sense of what you mean with the generator. Are we talking about the ability to fire up any old generator and recharge your batteries so you have better longevity? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, in fact, what we have done is kind of amped it up a little bit, meaning you just connect the generator into our the smart switch that we have, which is called Empower, and the automatic transfer switch function is done in software and it's built into it, so you don't need an extra ATS. That's one. Second, the beauty is that now generator runs in parallel to your DER. So your solar, your storage, and your generator all work simultaneously. Wow. And of course, it checks to make sure that the grid is not present, to bring the generator onto the microgrid. And once the generator comes onto the microgrid, all of these DERs are now, all of these resources, are now cooperating to ensure that the best economics are delivered. All of this is controlled by our app as well. So generator is now part of the app. We, of course, try to run the system as much as possible on solar and storage, given that, of course, the generator is still a fossil fuel device, right? So, which we want to avoid as much as possible. So we try to run the system on solar and storage. And in the event that you have an extended period of bad weather, I don't have enough solar, I still have my consumption, my batteries are not charging up, my grid isn't present, because you could be in a hurricane situation, as an example, I can turn on my generator and help charge the battery. And so the generator can be configured to come on at different states of charge. Say, hey, my state of charge reaches this, or if the moment I get disconnected from the grid, I want you to go to the generator. That's doable. Or, hey, only turn on the generator when I'm at a 30% state of charge in my battery, and then I'll shut it down the moment I reach 80%. That's possible. The fuel cell is a good addition as well. I mean, it runs on natural gas. It's a solid oxide fuel cell that we are working on. And what that will allow you to do is, again, it can run in the middle of the night. It can turn on, and as soon as the battery level drops to 30%, it turns on. And think about it, it's like trickle charges my batteries back up to about 80% because the battery provides the power, and now it's fully charged up to even 100%. So I think it's a good, again, the goal being it's really in line with our vision of providing that really resilient, self-reliant microgrid. And these are the things that enable that to happen.
Are these, this is amazing. Are these, is the fuel cell and the generator, are they going to be kind of third-party devices, or are they going to be Enphase approved, or Enphase itself kind of devices?
Obviously, we are not in the generator business, and we don't plan to be in the generator business. So yeah, it will be third-party generators. Fuel cell, on the other hand, is something that we are looking at very closely. I mean, we have invested in a fuel cell company, but it's more than just the solid oxide fuel cell. It's also IQ8's embedded in there, so that the fuel cell now can be AC coupled. So no, that's an Enphase fuel cell. And as far as the generator is concerned, obviously that's third party.
Fantastic. So much going on in this space. Of course, we didn't jump into the EV world too much, but we can leave something for our next interview, I suspect. So one last thing before we wrap this up, this is for Solar Power International, North America Smart Energy Week 2021. And, that community is going through a lot right now with Hurricane Ida, as well as, the COVID pandemic. So is there a message that you have for that community? By the way, they are out of power at the moment, and there's something like 1 million people that don't have power as we speak. So I wonder, to the community of New Orleans and to the Solar Power International crew and all of these wonderful people that we work with, is there anything you'd like to share with them just from Enphase as a closer?
Absolutely right. I mean, first and foremost, we've all gone through some tough times in the last 18 months with the pandemic, but I think, there's always hope, and we are coming through it, right? We're going to come out stronger. And then, of course, the current challenge with Hurricane Ida. But the thing is, I think we as a community, the renewable energy community, is extremely, extremely strong. And we're doing a lot of things so that we can avoid these things in the future, particularly 1 million people with no power. I think we have some really cool technology coming, really cool products coming. And it's not just the technology, the product that we are developing, the community at large, right? Our installation partners, our distribution partners, the utilities themselves. I think we are all we are all doing a lot of things here so that we can avoid these things in the future. And I think I'm really proud of our community. I'm really, really happy that I'm part of the community. And I think there's a lot of things to feel positive about, because I think that you'll see fewer and fewer people being affected by this if we do our part in Enphase developing the technology and the products, and our partners, and delivering them to the homes and in an economical manner and in an efficient manner, so we can really deliver the promise of renewables. And I think, and of course, the world benefits from it too. So
couldn't agree with you more. And I want to thank you for your time today. This has been Raghu Belur, founder of Enphase, and good long-term contributor and friend, I should say, to the Solar Coaster radio show here in Maui. We appreciate you very much. Please keep up the good work, and thank you again for your time.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh, and good luck. Thank you.
All right. That's Raghu Belur, Enphase Energy co-founder, chief product officer, brilliant fella, a lot of fun to talk to. Jay, any thoughts on that interview, or Raghu in general?
Yeah, it's really nice to get him to just talk about the vision, right? I mean, that's what we like to hear about, where they're making progress toward this total massive. I mean, I come from an IT background, so redundancy is great. He's talking about this massively redundant microgrid of microgrids in a larger grid, and everything talking to each other, and like just buying and selling little packets of energy all over the place. I mean, it's literally a Star Trek kind of future.
You know how they do those explainer videos where someone's like penciling something in? Actually, I can't stand those things, but I keep thinking of one where the washing machine is like, as a little, it's personified. It's got a little face, and it's saying, "Hey," it's like a little stock trader on the floor, and it's like, I want to buy electricity. Who's got it? And someone's up here like, "I'll sell it. My solar system." That's Raghu's vision, the way I envision it anyway. So very good. Yeah, I really get a kick out of that. And by the way, that's a heck of a, we sat around and talked for quite a while on that one. So we'll see if we can fit that in. But let's jump right into some of the policy things that are happening around the world in hydrogen, and just get a sense of what we're excited about. Which one of these do you want to touch base on first?
I love that. You said, I thought we were going to talk about policy in energy, and you said policy in hydrogen specifically.
Well, aren't they all hydrogen?
That is what's going on right now. I mean, you talk about hydrogen. So a trio of U.S. states from upstreamonline.com, trio of U.S. states pitch regional clean energy hub. We've actually talked about this before. The at least the Woodside proposed hydrogen project we talked about back in December of last year, and now they're just these three states are rolling out different types of hydrogen generation facilities to kind of proof of concept them all and see where the real benefits are. So we've got some green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, and then what's the other one? Gray.
Blue is where it's sequestered underground, right?
Blue is your natural gas. But it's interesting to see where they're putting them and what they're going to do with them. So the Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana plants are all going to be different, but they're all kind of a similar scale. And this is the hardest thing to figure out. Is I was trying to figure out like exactly how big each one of these is, and they give the numbers for the actual green hydrogen, the solar and or wind generated hydrogen in like megawatts, and they give the blue hydrogen in millions of cubic feet of hydrogen. I mean, it's so difficult to compare these numbers.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's just really, I mean, it's because it's fundamentally different, right? I mean, it's very easy to say I've got a 550 megawatt solar farm and we're doing electrolysis to fractionate the hydrogen off, right? But then when you're doing blue hydrogen is done specifically, you've got natural gas comes into the chamber, they add steam and a catalyst flame to burn the natural gas, and the reaction there will break the steam. So then you've got your hydrogen coming off, and you actually get carbon monoxide. The oxygen gets burned into the carbon from the LNG, and you get carbon monoxide, which is not good. But that's how that blue hydrogen process works. There is no energy input for electrolysis, so there's no way, I mean, there's no correlation. So you just need to know how much energy, how much hydrogen is going to come out of it at the end. And for the green stuff, it's kind of varying, depends on what the state of your electrodes are, how much power you're able to put into whatever system, and so that's why they give it in actual total megawatt power as opposed to amount of hydrogen they're going to generate.
I see.
It's a pain in the butt. But anyway, what I figured out is that the blue one is probably going to be about 4 times the size of the green. Where was it? I had just had the number. Here we go. So it was 750 million cubic feet is what they said, and that conversion ends up going to about 2,000, just under 2,000 tons.
Gotcha. So, well, I mean, I don't know what to say, man. I got to tell you, I'm glad to see these the scale of these types of things happening. And, you know, it's like we had the thing up in Niagara, Alabama, New York with Plug Power, and that was pretty new at that scale. Hadn't seen that discussion happening before. That was earlier this year. And now we're starting to see it kind of pop up everywhere. So it seems like there's confidence in this.
Like I said, a lot of this, I mean, it was actually planned before. Like I said, we heard about the blue, no, the green. We heard about the green in Oklahoma back in December. It's long before this whole war conversation had ever started. But there's a lot of touting now that, yes, we're doing this thing. Yes, we're doing this thing, because it's so right at the front of public consciousnness. We want to know how we're getting away from fossil fuels from a particular region.
Because of Ukraine and Russia.
because of this.
Yeah. Well, I guess you got to harness that. You know, if some good can come out of this scenario, it's like some mobilization and movement towards and political support for these alternatives, right? Which we already kind of have I think a technical belief in, that these solutions are real and can help us achieve the goals we want for climate change and for the shift to renewable energy sources. But we kind of recognize that the holdup has been political. Yep. Administrative. It's been trying to get people to make decisions. So if we can, you know, if this is a crisis that we have here, and it kind of gets people in the mindset to say, yeah, let's what they believe is chances, take some chances on these types of changes, then we got to do it. So I guess everyone's going to be talking about it right now.
Yeah.
Speaking
absolutely.
of more guys talking about
it's the same thing. So we've got MSN reporting on the Denmark pledge now to build up 6 gigawatt of green hydrogen capacity by 2024, which is right around the corner, considering where we are.
6 gigs.
Just to put that in perspective, so that the Oklahoma site was supposed to be 550 megawatts, so that's 0.55 gig for those don't want to do math. But then an additional 40 gigawatt by 2030. Currently, Denmark only produces around 0.3 gigawatts, so 300 megawatt worth of electrolyzers. I'm concerned a little bit because these electrolyzers can use some rare minerals. They're expensive. The minerals do degrade through the electrolysis process. You know, they're not, it's not permanent. Once you build an electrolyzer, it doesn't just sit there. I mean, it does oxidize and fail over time. So those need to be replaced. It's not a cheap proposition to roll out this many in rapid succession. And I'm wondering where the manufacturing capacity for all these, because everybody wants it all of a sudden. Denmark is not the only one. The US is not the only one. Everybody wants to get in on this now.
Yeah.
Where are the electrolyzers going to come from?
Well, you know, and I do recall a discussion recently about how it takes this kind of movement in the industry for there to start to be innovation in the actual technology. So electrolyzers in their current form, not a new technology, been around for what, 100 years or something, right?
For a long time. Since we had electricity and we were playing with it.
So electrolyzers have been around forever. The current technology is, as I understand it, at least with this last article, relatively unchanged. You know, it's evolved a little bit, of course, but not like kind of fundamentally. And so just as that starts to happen, as we start to see demand, we'll probably start to see innovation in that space. And I know that we're starting to, I read about a couple of startups that were changing the way electrolyzers work. So it could be that there's other ways to do these things, right? Yep. I mean, obviously these you know, countries in this case have enough confidence to publicly make these kinds of statements and these goals. And okay, you know, a statement or goal is what it is. But companies up in Scandinavia, they're in particular, you know, they're pretty close to the fray. Right. So these guys are going.
Yeah, that's it. Like we talk about in the US, our electric bill for at least for Hawaii, they're going to jump 20%. But we're only importing 8 or 9% of our total oil consumption or whatever energy consumption from Russia. They're in like 25% range, 25, right. 30%. And so that's much more significant amount of their portfolio, right? Their energy portfolio.
I just find it, you know, amazing that people, when we think about new technologies, a lot of the times the the negative kind of position is it's too expensive. It's only going to happen when the numbers pencil out. But that's assuming that money is the primary kind of driver of it, right? Money, of course, is a driver of it, but security, safety, volatility of the value, all of these other things are drivers, right? And in a given situation where, your security and your sovereignty is at risk, they're going to find a way to make that thing pencil, right? They're like, hey, we need this, right?
And the adoption, I mean, when we go to move to these massive markets, what is it, economies of scale, right. It's going to get cheaper.
Yes. The invisible hand of the market will make it cheaper. For sure. Yep. For sure. So, but there's a lot going on out there. We're talking about massive moves across the United States. We're talking about big moves in Europe. There's another one here too. Was it UK, Jay?
UK. Yep. Same thing. I mean, I had all these queued up right next to each other because they're pretty much all the same conversation. United Kingdom is putting a huge amount of money now, to get to another 5 gigawatt of green hydrogen generating capacity by 2030. 240 million pounds set aside for the net zero fund. They're going to be, again, buying a lot of electrolyzers.
So, and they mention tidal as a intermittent generation source in here, right?
Yep, tidal, and I don't see as so intermittent. I mean, it tends to happen every day.
Predictable intermittent.
Yes, I think it's a lot. I think that's a lot more closer to firm than your random wind
predicament
generator, right? you would think. I don't know.
So look, man, I'm not even sure. Like we would be interesting to take a look at tidal in terms of how much of it's actually being used as a source of energy these days, because we certainly don't have it in Hawaii, and I've never read or been close to any significant scale.
Every study I've ever read and proof of concept things has had issues with mechanical problems.
Right. They haven't succeeded. So it's interesting they bring that up there, right? So right now, hydrogen is kind of more believable than tidal is in our minds anyway, as the coaster guys, right? Yeah. And then before we do wrap this up, I know that I don't know if there's more news and events you want to touch on, but the bear in mind the interview with Raghu is pretty lengthy. So he does bring up the notion of fuel cell as being part of the future architecture of Ensemble. Do you remember him saying that? So now, do you see that? I guess that, and it's up until that Australian article we just talked about, I couldn't even kind of envision what that meant. But we're talking about the ability. What would that look like in an Ensemble system? Do you have a sense of that? Because I don't.
Okay. No, it's actually pretty obvious. So, and you're going to kick yourself, basically. Like everything in that grand vision, it's just a buyer or a seller, right? In little energy packets. And so you can have an electrolyzer out there, fractionating hydrogen, stores it. You can have a fuel cell generating it. The electrolyzer will be a consumer of energy, right? It will be buying energy when it's cheap, making the hydrogen, banking it. And you can have your fuel cell sitting there and, well, there's nobody else available at a cheaper price. I can fire up and provide energy for X cents per kilowatt, whatever it happens to be, kilowatt hour. It's really, everything becomes one of those little participants in the energy marketplace, and it can be done at home scale. I said I don't think hydrogen at home like that. I suppose somewhere in the far-flung future, it may be a self-contained box, right? You would just have this closed loop system where it has the water inside. It will fractionate, it'll store a small amount of hydrogen, and then refuel cell it. The water vapor from the fuel cell comes out, gets put back into water, right? It would be this little closed loop. That would be really cool. I don't think we're anywhere close to that, but you can still have small mid-scale kind of electrolyzers and fuel cells, just like that Honda one, out there at a substation, right? Substation needs extra juice on this particular circuit. Fire up the fuel cell, done.
It's an exciting future, my friend. So this has been the Solar Coaster. We're here with Raghu Belur. A lot of fun learning about Ensemble, all the news and events. It looks like hydrogen is kind of taking hold, and this kind of energy security is one of the top things on our mind these days with what's happening in Ukraine and with Russia. So maybe this will help us all kind of move in the direction of renewables through some of these various initiatives, through some of these new technologies that are emerging. I got a kick out of it, man. What do you think? Any final words?
Oh, I just love it. Like I said, I really think you're going to end up ripping your solar system apart and replacing it with Enphase and something else. Eventually.
And then replacing it with something else. We're going to keep doing this.
Happen. We're just going to be running through over and over again. But I want to get these things in the real world and have a play so we can.
Yes. We gotta get a close look at all of them. So thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in to Solar Coaster. Thank you, Jason Vericart. Have a wonderful weekend ahead, and aloha.
Okay. Hey, folks, and welcome to the Solar Coaster. This week we have Raghu Belur. What is he? Chief Product. What the hell is this thing? Chief Products Officer.
This is actually.
This is great, right? I love it.
Chief Product Officer, co-founder,
Products.
Enphase Energy.
That's the thing.
You want to start again?
Yeah. Hey, folks, and welcome to the Solar Coaster. This week we have Raghu Belur, co-founder and chief products officer of Enphase. I've had him on the show before. He's absolutely fantastic interview, and you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Of course, we talk about the world of energy, crisis in Ukraine causing some real problems for energy consumption around the globe. But this is too slow and shitty.
It's okay. You want to start again?
No.
All right, folks, welcome to the Solar Coaster. This show, we're going to be meeting with Raghu Belur, fourth time on the air with us. He's the co-founder, chief product officer of Enphase Energy. If you've been looking for what to do with your money and stocks and you're thinking about energy at Enphase, this is the place to check it out. We also are talking about hydrogen across the world. Obviously, right now, Ukraine, Russia, creating a lot of insecurity in the energy markets, and states and countries across the world are looking for solutions and creating new mandates. Let's check it out. It's a great show ahead.